Hey guys, so a few weeks ago I filmed a video called If I Could Only Keep 10 Eyeshadow Palettes. I'll link it below if you guys want to check it out. It was a tag created by Annette's Makeup Corner, and the premise of the tag was to choose 10 different palettes in your collection to keep if you had to get rid of everything. So I thought it was a really fun idea. In that video I shared a couple of Colourpop palettes that I decided to keep, and I asked you guys if you wanted to see a video just dedicated to Colourpop palettes because Colourpop makes my favorite eyeshadow formula. Their eyeshadow palettes make up a good majority of my eyeshadow palette collection, and because they have so many palettes, I feel like it can be very overwhelming when you're on the website and it's hard to choose which ones to try. So in today's video, I thought I would narrow it down to 10 Colourpop palettes, which is still a lot of palettes. I would love to know which Colourpop palettes you would choose. I realize that 10 is still a lot, so if there's like 1 or 2 Colourpop palettes at the top of your list, I would love to hear from you. One thing that I did differently for this video that I didn't do for my last video is that I only included palettes that are currently available. So I did not include any limited edition palettes or any discontinued palettes that you can't get your hands on. Otherwise, I totally would have included the Fame palette and the I Think I Love You palette in today's video. But I do have 2 other neutral palettes that I decided to include instead. So the first one is the Colourpop Doubleentendre palette. This is actually one of my most used palettes because it's just a simple, staple, neutral eyeshadow palette. It comes with 12 different shadows, and the majority of them are kind of like warm-toned neutrals, but overall it's a lot more subtle than the majority of my Colourpop palettes. So I find that I reach for this one if I'm in a hurry, if I have like 2 minutes to do my eyeshadow, or if I want a more subtle palette to use alongside of like a brighter dramatic palette, then this one is a great option. I've had this one for a long time. I reach for it over and over. I think that this one is a great option if you tend to keep things very simple, very subtle. If you don't do a lot with your eyeshadow, I think that you will enjoy this one because it really is just like a stripped down neutral palette. I would also have to choose the Colourpop Going Coconuts palette. This is such a staple in my collection. It's somewhat newer. They just released it at the end of 2019, but I love this one because it's not overly warm-toned or overly cool-toned. It really falls right in the middle. So a lot of my neutral palettes are so warm-toned, and I just find that sometimes I don't want that, especially during the fall and the winter, and this one really comes in handy. I would say the shadows overall are a little bit darker than the shadows in Double Entendre, so if you want lighter shadows, I would go with this one, but I just love this palette. I think all of the shadows perform perfectly because it's not overly warm-toned. I also find that it pairs so well with all of my colorful palettes. So these are my 2 true staple neutral palettes that I would go with. I really think the Through My Eyes palette is so underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this one, but I think it's one of their best palettes just because there's so much going on in this 16 pan palette. If you're somebody who already has a lot of palettes and you're just looking for like a fun palette to add to your collection, this is a great option, and I would definitely choose it as one of my 10 because there are so many gorgeous colors. You get like vibrant warm tones, you get some pretty golds, a yellow, an orange, some beautiful greens. Like there are also some deeper jewel tones in here. So I feel like no matter what type of look I'm going for, no matter what time of the year it is, I always love reaching for this palette, and I just think it is so much fun to use. So I would definitely choose this as one of my 10 as well, and I really do think it is so underrated. If you guys have been around for a while, you might know that I love the Colourpop monochromatic palettes. I think they are so gorgeous, so bright and vibrant, and no matter what color you're into, you're going to be able to find one that works well for you. I would love to choose all of them, but honestly, if I had to narrow it down to 10 Colourpop palettes, I couldn't just pick those, but I did choose 3. So the first one that I would choose would be the Honey palette. I never considered myself to be a yellow eyeshadow fan. I think that I am just intimidated by it for some reason. I will wear any color. I'll wear blue, green, purple, pink, it doesn't matter, but I never really got into yellows until I got this palette. I can't wait to wear it this summer because when I first got it, we were heading into fall, so I didn't wear it as much because I was really into like smoky tones and jewel tones, but I think it's going to be such a fun palette for the summertime. It's very bright and vibrant and fun, and it just makes me happy when I look at it. I also think it makes yellow a little bit more approachable because you do get some like neutral tones in here as well. So it's not like you're wearing like intense, vibrant neon yellows every time you reach for this. You can also do something a little bit more toned down and add like that pop of yellow. So I think it is such a fun palette. I would definitely choose this one. I would also choose the Blue Moon palette. I love this palette so much. I think as far as their monochromatic palettes go, this one has a lot of variety because sometimes when you pick up a monochromatic palette, you get the same look look over and over, but there are quite a few blue shadows in here, and I just think it is so good. Sometimes blues and purples and just more vibrant shades in general can be really difficult to work with, and I just don't find that to be the case with this palette. I think that this palette is so much fun. It's vibrant and gorgeous and intense, and I love reaching for this one. So I would have to include this one as well. The last monochromatic palette that I would choose would definitely be the It's My Pleasure palette. This is my favorite Colourpop palette of all time because I love pinks and I love purples, and I think they did such a good job with this one because even though there are only 9 shadows in here, you can get so many different looks. All of the shadows perform so well and they look so beautiful, and I just think they coordinate extremely well together. So if you are a fan of pinks and purples like me, I think you would love this one. It was hard to narrow it down. I really wanted to choose like a couple of the other monochromatic palettes, but these 3 are definitely my top picks. Speaking of pinks, I do have 2 other pink toned palettes that I would choose as well. Well, this one's kind of like coppery bronzy pink, but it's the Give It To Me Straight palette. I just love this palette. It's one of my all-time favorite Colourpop palettes. I guess these all are in a way, but I've had this one for a while. It just comes with the perfect mix of like neutrals and bronzes and coppers and berries, and it's just a lot of fun to use. I love reaching for this one when I don't want like a typical neutral eyeshadow look. Like when I want something that's a little bit more just fun and bronzy and berry toned, this one is the perfect option. You can create so many different looks using it, and I know it's been around for a while, but it definitely remains one of my favorite palettes. I just think that it is so gorgeous and the colors coordinate so well together. A new palette that I've just fallen in love with is the Colourpop All That palette. I am so impressed by this palette and I love it so much more than I ever thought I would. I just love the colors in here. You get the perfect mix between light, soft pinks and deeper, like red toned pinks. It's so much fun to work with. It's so much fun to use. Overall, it's a little bit more cool toned and I just think it looks so pretty and flattering on the eyes, and it's quickly become one of my absolute staples. So I would probably put this one in like my top 3. I don't know exactly how I would rank all of these, but I know that this one would definitely be near the top. I would have to choose the Kathleen Lights Colourpop So Jaded palette. Typically, I don't love larger palettes, but there's something about this one that I just enjoy so much. I think it's because there's such a good variety of shades in here. It's not like a large palette full of warm-toned neutrals or a large palette full of like colorful shades. I really feel like you get such a good mix, and I find that overall this palette is a little bit more cool-toned, and I don't have a lot of cool-toned palettes in my collection, so I really enjoy using this one. Realistically, I can kind of dupe some of the shades in here with other Colourpop palettes, but if I could only choose 10, I feel like this would definitely have to be one of them, just because there are a lot of beautiful colors in here. If you are a fan of colorful shadow, I think you'll enjoy this one. If you're typically a neutral eyeshadow wearer, there are some neutrals in here, but overall the palette as a whole is a lot more colorful, and it's just fun to use. I love jewel tones so much, so I find that this one comes in handy whenever I want like a pop of color on the lid, and I just think that it is one of their most beautiful palettes. And the last one that I would have to choose would be the Colourpop Disney Villains Misunderstood palette. This one is somewhat similar to the So Jaded palette, like a lot of the shades kind of match up, but I love using this one during the fall and the winter when I'm doing more of a smoky eyeshadow look. This is just the perfect accent palette. When I pull this palette out, I don't typically just reach for this palette. I kind of have to mix in a few other palettes, but I think that's why I love it, because in my mind, I do consider it an accent palette. So sometimes when I'm doing my eyeshadow and I just want like a really beautiful color all over the lid, I'll reach for this one and I can get it every single time. Again, I just think that this is a little bit of an underrated palette. If you're somebody who has a large collection and you have your staple basic go-to neutrals, this will add so much to your collection because you can pair it with any other palette and just get a really beautiful, intense look. So I would pick this one as well. Okay, guys, so those are the 10 Colourpop palettes that I would choose if I had to narrow it down and get rid of the rest of them. I kind of want to do like an updated Colourpop eyeshadow palette collection video, and maybe I can rank them if that's something you would want to see. I don't want to be too repetitive, but I do think there are so many Colourpop palettes that sometimes doing like some sort of guide video could be helpful if you're new to the brand or new to their palettes. But anyways, let me know in the comment section below which palettes you guys would choose. I would love to hear from you, and I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.